Well, hello there, future nurses, and welcome to the Facebook Live of How to Organize Your Notes. But before we get started, I wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping. Okay, so on Tuesday next week, the 18th, remember that I am doing surgery with Cynthia. It's going to be oh so much fun. I did my pre-op today. So I'm going to take you with me on the little journey of what a patient goes through when they go through outpatient surgery procedures. And we'll go through the pre-op. Probably I'm going to talk to a couple of my friends because this is where I work, and I'm going to see if I can get a couple people to maybe interview and while we're waiting, and then I'll go in for surgery, and then when I come out, one of my girlfriends is going to be recovering me, so I will have her hand me my phone, and then you will get to see me post-op jacked up. But I told her not too much of the pain medications because I don't like that feeling and I don't know how I'm going to react. So it could be funny, but we'll take you through the post-op phase as well on what we assess and why we assess what we do. And then we'll go through phase 2. Now, phase 2 is where the patient is getting ready for discharge, and they go over all the discharge instructions and make sure that you have any devices. I don't know that I'll need crutches, but I think I go home with some kind of like little ice machine thing. So we'll go through that. It's a little bit different now because we're not allowing people into the hospital because of COVID. So they'll have to do the discharge outside. And I think that they do it like right there as they load you in the car and they tell your person like, hey, this is what you do, this is what you don't do, and see you later kind of thing. So it'll be interesting. So I think it'll be a lot of fun. It's going to be broken up into little bits. So just make sure you check in, but it'll be there for you to come back and look and laugh at. But it's only for the group. It's only going to be in my private Facebook group. So if you're not in the group, go ahead and ask to join the group if you want to. I'm doing a lot of individual and special teaching inside the group that I won't be doing on the page. And there's 3 questions you need to answer. And I think one of them is yes. And one of them is what semester are you in? And one is what is the most challenging subject for you? And I put that in there so that I know what direction to take things in so that I can provide you with content that helps you in school. So there's that. And then I wanted to share this with you. So this is what I call the the clinical Bible. And I recommend this to all my students to use for clinicals because it's something easy that can fit in your pocket. You won't have to be on your phone. I know that in our facility, you can, every time you need to log on or get on, let's say, Google to do a search, you have to log back in. It kicks you out right away. So that's a waste of time. And they don't like seeing students on their phones because they think you're doing something other than what you're supposed to be doing. So this book, this is an old edition. This is a 9th edition. And honestly, you don't need a new edition. And why? Because I was looking through this because I'm going to do some special teaching next week on Thursday on diabetes. And I was looking through this for some references and the numbers are a little bit off. This, I think this was basing the United States diabetes numbers from 2015. And it's a little bit different. It's about 10 million more. But the numbers don't matter because you're not going to be tested on that per se. You're not going to need that in the clinical setting. But what this book does have is it has everything you need to know. It has pathophysiology. It has labs, exams, patient teaching, nursing diagnosis, medications, signs and symptoms. It has everything you need to know while you're on clinical site so that you can reference it quickly and then know what you need to do for your patients. So this is an excellent book. Get the old version so you're not paying a lot of money, but I highly, highly recommend it. And I did have students last semester tell me that they use this to study and that it was actually more effective as a study tool than their book. So go figure. So real quick, this is just going to be a few minutes. We're going to go real fast, but what I want to show you is what this is called. And I don't use binders because binders are huge and bulky. And when you're trying to get everything into your backpack, they're awkward. Nothing fits, right? And they can be expensive. Yes, I don't know who put the comment on there. I will put the link for the book, but honestly, if you just go to Amazon and you Google clinical companion, and I think the author on this one is Lewis. I know we call it the Iggy book, the Ictivatus or whatever the last name is. They have a clinical companion, but I haven't seen that one to know like how it's set up. I'm sure it's the same, but this is the Lewis one. And I got this off of Amazon. So, but I will put a link in the notes when I'm done. So I wanted to show you what I use. So this is what's called a classification folder. And it's used in doctors' offices and lawyers' offices. It's used in a lot of places where they have to keep a lot of files. And I started using these probably about 15, 18 years ago when I first went back to school to become a nurse, and I was doing the prereqs I needed to do. So if a little backstory here, before I was going to be a nurse, I owned a restaurant, and I owned a very successful Italian restaurant, and I can cook. But I got out of the restaurant business. I got divorced, and I didn't want to be in the restaurant business anymore. And I had almost, before going into the restaurant business, I was this close to finishing my history degree because I was going to be a history professor. And then I realized very quickly that that was kind of boring, and I'm not boring, and I get bored very quickly. And I didn't know what to do. And I started going back to school, and one of my very, very good friends was a recruiter, and she suggested that I go to nursing school. And I thought, heck no, there's no way I could do that. Like the blood, the poo, the pee, the stuff, like no way, there's no way I can do that. And my sister was going to nursing school at the time, and and she said, go to nursing school. So I thought, fine, let me just check this out. And I took an EMT class, and I really liked the EMT class, although I was probably the dumbest one in the class, and I was not prepared for it at all. And someday I'll tell you my story about, like, I was so super embarrassed because I didn't know something and everybody else knew it. And I was like the dumbest one in the class, and why it's okay to suck sometimes. So someday I'll share that story with you. When you guys need it, I'll share it. So I ended up taking a monitor tech class, and something just clicked. It was kind of like the Matrix when they get downloaded all the information. It just happened. And I was like, I know Kung Fu. No, I know EKGs. And it just happened. It was so easy for me. And I got a job at the ICU at a local level 1 trauma center here. And actually I called the manager like every day, like, give me a job, give me a job, give me a job. I see it posted, hire me. And finally he's like, you're bothering me, so I'm going to hire you. And that's how I got into the hospital, and that's how I got into healthcare. But at that time, I was in school trying to get my sciences because I needed the chemistry and the micro and the physiology and the anatomy. So I needed my sciences and I needed some math. Ugh. So I wanted kind of a way to organize things a lot easier than that stupid bulky binder. And like these binders are super cute and I don't want to put them in a backpack and have them get all ratty because one, they're super cute, but two, Walmart doesn't make these anymore. And I called the manufacturer, and for me to buy more, I have to order 12,000. And I don't need 12,000 binders. So I'm going to keep these nice. So I use those classification folders. So this is the one I use for my 4th semester students. And I'm just going to show you, it has the front section. So we open that up and then it has a divider and then we have 2 more sections. So how I do this, and if you look, this is pretty stretchy and it will stretch out as wide as you need it. Let me get that up there. So see, you could fit a lot of papers in there. And then it's going to get all ratty. And at the end of the semester, guess what? You can throw this thing away because you can get 10 for like $14, $15, depending where you order them from, which is a lot cheaper than the binders. And if you get creative, you can color and put stickers and just make it all cute and sassy for you in school. But you can take your notes out and then put it in a binder on the shelf. So how I organize these. The front page, I put my syllabus. So I always have my syllabus with me. And I actually use this in the clinical setting. So I don't have to carry a big old binder. I just carry this. So I always have the syllabus here. And then on the second page, I do the schedule, the class schedule. So this is the class schedule for my students' theory class because I try to match what we're talking about in post-conference to what they're studying. And so you can keep this right here. It keeps your schedule. You know when your tests, your quizzes are, you know what you're supposed to be reading. Then on the inside, on the next page, now you can do this anyway. And I was thinking about it because I don't know that it would matter for lefties and I think today is National Lefty Day, Left-Hand Day. And I know that, the desks aren't always set up correctly. If you're in those, forum halls, those like theater type seating, I know there's very few lefty desks, but if you're a lefty, like I'm a righty, so I would put my, let me turn this around. Okay, so I'm a righty, so I would put my PowerPoints right here, the notes that the instructor provides. I put the PowerPoints right here, and then I put blank paper here. And when I first started doing this, I was using color paper because I just thought it was cuter, and I used like a lot of pink. And then instead of having to buy dividers, I just use a little Post-it note on the edge so that I know where the sections are. So as you're in theory and you're in class and the instructor's lecturing, you can write your notes over with the PowerPoint, and then you can take more notes on the other side, and you can actually have it match up to the PowerPoints as you're going through. Now, what I suggest is the night before class, if you know you're going to be covering chapters 14, 15, 16, and 17, to do a brief outline like I taught you on MedSurg Simplified, and do a brief outline your own notes so that you have them for reference. You can take notes over here on your PowerPoints, and then all you need to do on your own notes that you've already taken is highlight what they talk about and add anything else in that you need. So if you do it the night before or a couple days before, not only is that information fresh in your mind, but when you go to lecture and you hear that information again, it actually gets more embedded in your memory. and then you're seeing it up on the PowerPoints. So not only have you written it, you've heard it and you've seen it. So the more, how do I want to say this? There's kinetic learning, there's kinetic, there's reading, there's writing, and then there's auditory and audiovisual, right? So with the more of those that you combine while you're studying, the higher percentage that you have to remember and be able to recall the information. So that's how I use these. They're inexpensive. You can get 10, like I said, for $14. So it's not like you have to buy a new binder every semester or every other semester when it gets all ratty from being used up. They fit so nicely in everything. If it gets too bulky, you can take out what you don't need and stick it in your binder, and you just have this to deal with instead of a big binder. So I'm going to see, there's a couple comments here. It says the lefty, yes, and the desks, Alexis, yes, they're horrible. Oh my gosh, I feel so bad, but happy Lefty Day to you. And do I have any tips for online classes that do not have lecture? That's really, I don't know how they're not having lecture. I don't know how they're not getting away with not having lecture. My school, when we went online, we had lecture. And when we transitioned our clinical to online, I literally did a 6-hour lecture, 6 hours. Like, I can talk, but 6 hours, my voice was hoarse. I had to drink chamomile, and I don't even like chamomile. Like, I prefer like a beer or a glass of wine, but I'm over here sipping on the chamomile because my voice was so hoarse and my throat was so sore from 6 hours of lecture, because we used on my first semester class, we used, I can't remember the program we used, but on my fourth semester, it was vSim. And then on my fourth semester, we used Swift River. So they're basically the same thing. And they did, they had the simulation there. And we basically walked through simulations, and I did questions. Like, I basically grilled them all. And we tried to have some kind of exchange. I did as much lecture as I could to try to get the hours we needed. But I don't know how your school and how your instructors are getting away with not having Zoom lectures, because I don't know how they're accounting for that class time, because per your BRN, and if you look it up, or BON, depending on how, like, what your state calls it. Ours calls it Board of Registered Nursing, or you could say BON, which is Board of Nursing. But I would look it up and see what their requirements are, because they have specific hours that are required for lecture and for clinicals. And so you can't skirt around that. And I have heard that some instructors are recording their lectures and then putting them up on the Canvas and having the students watch them that way. And I think that there's a way to monitor, but I don't get that detailed in Canvas. I just trust that everybody's doing it. But the only thing that I can suggest is you follow the outline that your instructor gives you, that you use the 11 steps from MedSurg Simplified and cover each of those topics. So that's anatomy, physiology, pathophysiology, signs and symptoms, your assessment, your nursing diagnosis and nursing interventions, medications, labs, exams, procedures, and patient teaching. That's 10, but I put anatomy and physiology together. And outline your notes in that way. I would also use an NCLEX style question book. The Saunders books are great. Don't get the ones that have all the outlined information in it. You don't need that. That's what your books are for. You need questions. You need tons and tons of questions. So if you're covering, endocrine, then do lots and lots of endocrine questions. The more questions, you may not even get the same kind of questions, but that's not the point. It's the style of the question. It's learning where you're making your mistake with those type of critical thinking questions. Like for me, my big mistake was always going too fast. I would just read the question because I want to get it over with. And especially in a test situation where you're nervous and maybe your grade is your grade is writing on this. Maybe you failed the class before. There's a lot of pressure, right? Who wants to fail out of nursing school and then, have to be a stripper? I don't, because nobody wants to see this. I don't even want to see this. So yeah, I was panicked every single time and panicked. And I studied and I was still panicked. And I did well, but I still panicked. Those questions are hard. I'm sorry, they fuck with you. So the more you practice them, the more you can see the little tricks that they're trying to play on you. And the more that you can see where you're making your mistakes. And like my mistakes were, I was always going too fast. I would read the question too fast and make an assumption before I even got to the end on what I thought the answer was. And guess what? There was always that answer in there. And guess what? I always got it wrong. Or I would miss a key word. I would miss a key concept in there. And I would think that they were wanting an assessment when they were really looking for the rationale for the assessment, because that's how they mess with you. They put a lot of information in those questions that you don't even need. It's just fluff to mess with you, to get in your brain, to make you more nervous. It's a good thing because as a nurse, you have to work under pressure. You're always working under a lot of pressure, and depending what area you work in, like when I work in critical care, there's a lot of pressure in there. There's a lot. And especially now with COVID, there's a lot of pressure. So you have to, I think this is preparing you for the pressure, but I suggest doing questions. I used questions to study. And what I would do, in fact, let me read one here, because I actually I screenshotted this question because I wanted to remember to talk to you guys about this at another point. But this is, I forget where I screenshotted this from, but the question is, metoprolol is added to the pharmacologic therapy for a diabetic patient who has stage 2 hypertension and initially was treated with Lasix and Altase. An expected therapeutic effect is, well, it's asking, the first one is decreased heart rate. The second one is lessening of fatigue. The third one is improvement of blood sugar levels. And the fourth one is increased urine output. Well, if you don't pay attention to, because they just threw out 3 medications, right? And those answers all pertain to one of those medications. So if you're not paying attention to the fact that they just want you to answer for metoprolol, you're going to miss it. But if you don't know what Lasix does and how it works, if you don't know how Altase works, it's also called Ramipril. So we all know that if it ends in pril, it's a what? What? Did I hear somebody say ACE inhibitor? Yes, it's an ACE inhibitor. And so we know ACE inhibitors work on blood pressure. We know that they don't decrease heart rate, but we know that metoprolol is a beta blocker and decreases heart rate and blood pressure. But when I was a student, if I didn't know what metoprolol did, guess what? Before I answered it, and this is when I was home practicing, home studying, I would look it up before I even answered the question. Well, what does metoprolol do? Well, let me look that up. It does decrease heart rate, but it doesn't lessen fatigue. Why would it do that? It actually makes you more fatigued. If you look at some of the side effects of blood pressure lowering medication, one of the side effects is always fatigue. Why? Because these people have been running around for God knows how long with high blood pressure, and now we're lowering it and we're decreasing the perfusion to their brain, and so they get a little tired. Their brain's not used to having decreased perfusion, so they get a little tired. So lessening fatigue is not one of them. We do know that metoprolol can affect blood sugars, especially in diabetics. That's why we always want to check it. But it doesn't improve the blood sugar levels. So that's not it. And it doesn't increase urine output per se. Then we have Lasix. Well, Lasix, we know that's a diuretic, right? But if I didn't know that was a diuretic, or if I didn't remember the signs and or the side effects of it, I would get my drug book. Oh, I don't have it up here. It's downstairs. I would get my handy dandy drug book and I would be looking up Lasix. What are the side effects? And that's how I would study. And I would literally break everything down and look everything up that I didn't know. I would look up words I didn't know, even if in the back of my mind I thought, oh, I think it's this, I would still look it up because it was an effective tool to study and I wasn't having to read through my book or write tons of notes. I just used all those questions. And especially in those in the NCLEX books, I think that I haven't looked at one in a while, but they break them up into sections, right? So you have cardiovascular, and then you have endocrine, and then you have renal. So you've had tons of questions to practice on. Your books, if your book should have practice questions as well. I would contact your instructor to see if they are going to be putting up any online lectures. And I would definitely call your school and ask your school, like, hey, what's up with that? Like, I know we're online, but we're not having lectures. What am I paying for? What's the point of this? Like, they're getting paid to teach. They're getting paid to teach you. This is not a self-directed course of learning here. There needs to be some type of direction and not just here's the slide deck, here's the syllabus, this is when the tests are. That's my online class right now. I'm taking an online class. And it's basically here's the book, here's the slides, here's the syllabus, this is when you need to take your test, these are the rules. And then I'm going to grade it and I'm never going to know you. And don't even email me if you have a problem. I emailed because I couldn't get online because it had locked me out. And they're like, oh, well, what are you going to do? Right. But I would definitely contact your school and very nicely say, hey, what's up with this? We're not having a lecture. I would also, I don't know how you feel about getting together with friends from school and having study sessions. You can do it in person. If you don't feel comfortable doing it in person, you can do it on Zoom meetings and have everybody break up sections and cover those sections, share your notes, and quiz each other and teach each other. So if you get the section on cardiovascular, then you're going to be teaching cardiovascular. And guess what? You're going to be a cardiovascular expert. So right now is when you get scrappy. Now you got to get scrappy. Now you got to dig in and get creative and talk to your friends at school and see what they're doing and how they're doing it. And just do your best to survive. I'm sorry. I feel bad for you guys. I'm going to do everything I can. I'm having surgery next week. So I'm actually off now. So I'm having surgery next week and then I'm going to be off for, I don't even know how long. So I will definitely be here to help you if you need anything. You can always direct message me. You can email me at cynthia@nursing-school-simplified.com and I'll get back to you. I've been spending a lot of time working on some stuff for you. So next Tuesday, we have surgery with Cynthia, right? You're not going to see nothing. Nobody's going to see nothing. Maybe my cute toes that I have to paint because the freaking salons are closed. But that'll be Tuesday. And then Thursday, I'm going to do a diabetic teaching, what we teach our diabetic patients. The following Tuesday, I don't know the date off the top of my head, but I will schedule that in the group. I'm going to be talking about ethics. Nursing ethics, nursing standards, specifically because we had an occurrence in the group, and then that same person that I booted from the group was in another group doing the same thing. And whoever is in our group right now, I'm so sorry. I don't remember your name, but whoever reported it, thank you so much. But we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about ethics. That's not next Tuesday, the following Tuesday. And then the following Thursday on the 27th, I have a really great interview with a woman who specializes in high performance individuals. She helps high performance individuals with ADD, ADHD, and anxiety. And she helps them overcome those obstacles to succeed. So I met her in one of my other groups that I'm in. It's like a mastermind type group, and she is phenomenal. And I've been listening to her podcast, and I thought I need to bring this to you guys because I know that I've seen a lot of students posting, not in our group, but in other groups, about being worried about how they're going to tackle school with the high anxiety, and especially now with everything going on, and how they're going to tackle school with ADD and ADHD, and how do you succeed in a career like this with ADD and ADHD. And she is just phenomenal, and she's going to have some great suggestions and resources for everybody. And I don't think I have ADD, but I do have a little shiny ball syndrome. So that maybe that's on the spectrum somewhere. And I've been listening to her and following her for a while. And a lot of the things she says, they really help. So I'm really excited to be able to bring that to you guys. So if there's any other questions, let's see. No, nope, there's no other questions. So I think that's going to be it for right now. So I just want to remind you guys about the podcast. I have a new episode coming out next week, and it'll be on malignant hyperthermia. So if you want to do a little research on that, and let's hope I don't develop malignant hyperthermia. And I think that's it. So I want you guys to have a great day and chin up. And if you need anything, just let me know. So we will talk to you soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.